Hello, everybody. I'm Rodrick Cox, and welcome to today's podcast. And I am fortunate to be joined again by Miss Katrin Theodoli. Hello, Katrin.
Hi, Rodrick.
Hello. Well, thank you again for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, it's a great pleasure.
Well, I assume you are hopefully in sunny Florida down there in Palm Beach, and maybe there is some sun shining through these crazy days. I know in our last podcast we talked about the COVID-19 and all of that. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about where your current factory is and where Magnum Marine is on the most infamous street in Florida, 188th Street, Thunderboat Row.
That's right. We're still there.
Well, you are the last one standing, isn't that right?
Yes, we've been there for 40 years, actually. So it's a very, very long time. But what a street that is, or what a street that was. Very exciting.
Well, I know if anybody goes down there now, and you're pretty much the first building, because I know they've even changed the route of the roads over the last couple of decades. But now it's the whole thing that seems to be the trend everywhere is that little short flat buildings turn into big high rises and condos. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And we're the only small, fat, low one left.
Well, let's talk about, you've been there for 40 years, so one might say you've probably seen it all, over that time. But what was it that made that street so famous?
Well, I think obviously the boat building, and I think around 1966 or so, Don Aronow, who was the most famous creator probably of American Powerboating, together with Dick Bertram and a few other friends, decided to open their first, or Don Aronow's first factory in 188th Street. And so he opened, I think Donzi was first, and I believe Donzi also was created by Don Aronow, and he sold Donzi. He built a little factory, he built Donzi's. And when he sold Donzi, he moved next door and built another little factory, which was called Magnum. And so here was Donzi and here was Magnum, and they were all race boats in the powerboat circuit, in the international powerboat circuit. And then he sold Magnum, and then he opened another little factory called Cigarette. And all the factories did well, and they grew. And the street was basically the center of American powerboating in the 1970s, and became extremely famous for that. And I would say not only American, but probably it was the world's most famous cradle of powerboating.
Well, Katrin, how you have so much knowledge and so much history in the world's hub at the time of boat manufacturing. When did you sort of get involved? That was the mid-'70s. I mean, how did that come together for you?
Well, my husband and I, we were living in Italy at the time, and had decided that we were going to buy Magnum. He loved the sea, he loved performance, he loved the Magnum boats, and he had a vision of making these race boats into a power yacht, a big yacht that could perform like a race boat but had the comforts of a yacht. And so one day we moved from Italy and we moved to Miami and purchased Magnum Marine. And so he started building his dream of this racing power yacht.
Right. Well, and okay, let me go back one more time and say, had you guys come over here many times and then sort of got the itch for it and knew you had the opportunity, or then did you just move and then the opportunity came about for Magnum Marine?
Well, my husband was importing some power boats at the time, and mainly from Magnum, and he was the exclusive representative, and he had this vision of building a bigger Magnum, a yacht that could perform like a race boat. And I think he talked to Don Arno at the time and said, why don't you build something like that for me? Because the European clients would love a boat that they could really go places with, that they could go from from Italy to Sardinia,
Right.
that they could travel, they could go to Greece, but they need they need a bigger boat. They need a boat that has comforts, that has a bedroom, that you can sleep on, that and that they can drive themselves like a race boat.
Right.
And however, he found that Don Arno really didn't believe in that. And so he said to me one day when we were in Italy, why don't we go and why don't we buy Magnum?
Hmm.
And I remember the day because it was cold and it was winter. And I said, Florida, oh, that must be really cool. and so we left without much consideration about anything except this passion for
Building boats.
the boating.
Yeah, that I mean that's that's quite a story just from the standpoint that you're willing to make that commitment and I would have assumed maybe back then in the mid 70s or maybe late 60s that importing and bringing boats overseas was not necessarily an easy task or a very quick task, was it, or was it something that was relatively convenient?
Uh, the Mediterraneans are basically all boaters, and they loved the power boats that my husband brought into Europe. But they wanted something bigger and more comfortable, like I explained just a minute ago.
Right.
And so, there was this conviction, this idea that this is something that we need to do, that we can do, and open up the power boating to an entirely new industry. And it's amazing when you see today the power boats that are being built, especially in Italy, with cabins, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they used to be 50 feet, now they're 60, now they're 80, now they're 100 feet. And that all of that really came from Filippo Theodoli, my husband's concept of building the first power yacht in 1976,
Right.
because that didn't exist before. People couldn't go from Italy to Sardinia. Either they had a big yacht and crew and were very, very rich, or they had a little tiny boat and they couldn't really get away from the shore.
Right.
And so this is the first time that actually people were able to take their boat, their family, their friends, and go travel and go from Italy to Greece and to go to France and to move around in the Mediterranean. So it was a tremendous, successful concept, an idea which didn't exist before. And I think one forgets, how recent all this is.
Right. In the reality of things, it is still very recent. And so I guess through that transition, you almost felt like you had a customer base already in place, maybe over there, and all you had to do was come over here and start manufacturing some boats.
Oh, absolutely. No, it was all our friends wanted a boat like that. And, it was a totally new and very, very successful concept.
Right. Well, let's talk about 188th Street, and you might have to fast forward a few years, but there were a lot of manufacturers on the street, and there were a lot of people coming to Thunderboat Row, and it was definitely sort of a mecca where boats were getting pumped out and manufactured. Did at the time did you realize what was going on your street, or how important Thunderboat Row is with the mix of racing and all the different influences around? And surely there was the drug scene and all of that. I mean, do you know what you were going through at the time?
Well, it was very exciting. I mean, the street was certainly the center of international power boating, the world's most famous power boating center, without any question. And there, as you just mentioned, of course, there was the drug running. And so I remember sitting in my office one night, and I was alone. My husband had gone home, and I hear, the engines being fired up from a boat next to my office in the canal, ba-bum, 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 and you hear them one after the other, and I start saying, well, what's going on? It's dark. What's going on?
Right.
And the boats went out at night and went to get, I suppose it was marijuana from motherships, in the direction of the Bahamas, and came back. And so it was a wild time. Not that I understood or knew much about that, but I was sort of living on the fringe of that, right?
Right. And I guess as time went on, you sort of really did get an indication of what high performance boating was like and what it was like to hear those noises at night, and you knew what kind of things that people were doing just because of the time, and the era that you lived in. Did you realize how big of a deal it was for drugs and racing and high performance boats? I mean,
Well, yes. I mean, racing certainly, and high performance boats certainly is. As I said, it was the world's center. I mean, any European, or even for that matter, Asians who really liked to race boats, they came to 188th Street, and they came to Magnum, and they came to Cigarette, and they came to Donzi, and that was the center, this without any question, the center of the world. And I have a little anecdote. I remember that I was sitting at my desk one day, and I get a phone call from one of my clients who was the Crown Prince of Bahrain, and he said, Katrin, what's going on your street? And I said, why? What's going on my street? And he said, but I heard there's something going on. Was Don Arno shot? And I said, shot? What do you mean? Yes, I hear. He calls me as I repeat from Bahrain, and I said, what are you talking about? Go. I'll stay on the phone. Go see what's happening on your street. And I go outside, and Magnum Marine is right on the corner of 188th Street. And there's a red light. And there's all the police, and there's a car. And indeed, Don Arno was shot right there on the corner. And what's extraordinary about that is, about the story really, is that, Bahrain already knew what happened on the street before we did, which is to explain how international that street was, It's quite an extraordinary moment, right?
I don't even know if that's the right word. I love the word extraordinary, but to think that you got a, international phone call at the time and someone saying, go to your window or go outside and look what just happened on your street. That was a little bit before social media, wasn't it?
Yes, right. Today it
oh,
would be nothing extraordinary, probably, right?
Not one bit, but so did you know the impact of that, or do you feel like that was what was your feeling of him getting shot at the time? I mean, there had to have been some just unbelievable thoughts that something like that would happen.
Well, obviously, it never had occurred to me. It's, the violence. But on the other hand, I suppose later, with everything that was going on our street
Right.
at night, especially, it wasn't much of a surprise, maybe, right? I
Right.
mean, we also had Apache boats that was next to Cigarette. And there were all sorts of rumors about drugs and about all sorts of litigations and rivalries. So probably underneath of all the daily sunny racing, there was probably some great deal of turmoil underneath with all the drugs and everything else that was going on, right? Must have
Absolutely.
been.
Um, it's obvious from that standpoint, but I mean that's an unbelievable moment, in the world of high performance, boat manufacturing, and obviously for your street, with the different manufacturers that were on your street and yourself, and you guys had moved from Italy, and you have Don and all these other people, and Dick Bertram, and just all the people involved in that area. Was there more of a sense of togetherness in that street, or was there more of a sense of competitors? I mean, was there an overlying sort of theme how everyone either got along or didn't get along or didn't even talk to each other back then?
I don't really know because I think that Magnum was a little bit apart in our philosophy and our work because we had, as I said before, moved to building power yachts, which were no longer really race boats. So we were not involved, I think, in the race boat circuit and the evening circuit.
Right.
So I was a little bit on the fringe of that. I was on the street, and when I talk to you like that, I'm still quite amazed about the stories that we lived through.
Right. Well, let me ask you then, just because offshore powerboat racing is such a huge thing, and it's surely has its ebbs and flows of if it's going up and down, and the quality of boats and participants and organizations and all that. What was it like for you, even if it was a little bit of the tail end, or for a period of time? What was it like for you being around, or at least seeing how race boats were being manufactured and people that were involved with it, and what was your thought of racing at the time?
Oh, I thought it was very exciting. I thought it was very exciting, and you had all these uh, people who were larger than life, like Don Arno. Um, that's the only way to express it, right? Larger than life.
Right.
And they lived lives that were larger than life as well, and the racing and probably everything that came with it.
Right.
So it was quite admirable.
Did you ever go to either see Bimini and any of the participants that did that, or Key West, or did you ever really even make it out for the racing side at all?
Oh yes, of course. And my husband loved the racing part especially, and he built a 27 with BPM engines. I don't know if you remember those engines. I think they had
Yeah.
like 800 horsepower or something like that. He put it on a 27, and he went to race in Key West. And of course, I went with him. Not that I raced, no, but and then of course we raced our big 63,
Right.
and that was very exciting because my husband's belief, my belief also, because everything that he believed in, I sort of got into very much myself, that it didn't really mean that much for a client that a little boat would go at 100 miles an hour and would break up or whatever. What clients really wanted to know is, with a boat that he could buy and that he could drive, how long would it take him to go to Bimini? And obviously you had to make it back. And so with this concept in mind, we built the first Magnum 63 power yacht and raced it in the Nassau, Miami. And we won the first two times outright, which was quite extraordinary, and which proved the point that, for a client, it's important that you make it home, and not so much that you get the top speed of 100 miles an hour, but that you can be the fastest to make it there and to come home. And I think that proves our point. And I think we did something like an average speed of 60 or 70 miles an hour, going Miami, Nassau, Miami, and back. And then, of course, we also had a range. We had the range, we had diesel engines, and we could make it without stopping, you know?
Right.
So I think that was a revolutionary concept, that you can actually have speed of a race boat, but that you can have comforts and that you can make it home, which really was probably the most important concept, no?
It's funny that you say that. I mean, and you said that 3 or 4 times for making it home. I think if that was just alone your marketing strategy, I think that was probably genius, because for many, many years, and for race boats not even being able to make it to the end, as they say, with the opportunity to finish, because so many boats don't do it. But I think to be able to say that and do that and manufacture it in such a way that it is a fun and fast and reliable boat, that surely has, a lot to say for itself. So on that 63 race boat, I think I saw a picture in your book, but it seemed like it had a lot of people in the boat on racing. Did it have a lot of people?
Oh, yes. I mean, there was, you know, that's another part of this concept. It doesn't matter. We can have 10 people aboard, and we had drinks and we had anything you wanted. The weight really wasn't of much consequence. I mean, we had a heavy boat, we had big diesel engines, and the concept was, you can have a power yacht, you can have people, you can have comforts, and you can have top speed, and we guarantee that you will always make it home, which is extraordinary.
Oh, that's fantastic, Catherine. All right. Well, I know I have an opportunity to have another couple podcasts with you. So I think unbelievable story to think you get a phone call to look out your window and an unbelievable event like that happened. But Catherine, I just want to thank you again for joining us today, and I look forward to sort of our next episode coming up.
Okay, wonderful. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you, Catherine. Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you.